If you broke your arm, you'd probably go to the hospital. If you had a persistent cough, you might go to a doctor or a medical clinic. But what if you had a legal problem? I don't mean that you've been arrested or charged with a crime, but what if your landlord sent you an eviction notice? Or you found out that you're being sued? Or you simply wanted to make arrangements for end-of-life care? Would you know where to turn? And would you be able to afford the services you need? For far too many people, the answer is no. I want to convince you that we should all care about access to justice. Now, what do I mean by access to justice? Simply that you're able to use the legal system to plan your life and to resolve disputes. Now, let me tell you why I care about access to justice. You see, I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was about 12 years old. I remember we had a mock trial in my grade 6 class. It was a treason trial, and I was defense counsel. And at the end of the day, we won. My client was acquitted, and I was hooked. I loved the feeling of being part of justice being done. Now, fast forward about 15 years. I'm now a lawyer working in Vancouver. And here's the scene that played out in front of me one day. I was in court waiting for my case to be heard. And up at the front was a woman. She was representing herself without a lawyer and trying to convince the judge of something. I could tell that the case had to do with her mortgage. There was a lawyer for the bank there on the other side, too. But she was having real problems with the process, and the judge was getting visibly frustrated. Now, here's the thing. I knew this woman's story because I had seen her a year before at a free legal clinic. Yet here she was, 1 year later, still trying to deal with her legal problem, still without a lawyer. This was the exact opposite of all those feelings I loved from that mock trial. Here, the process was slow and frustrating, and at the end of the day, nothing had really changed. When I practiced, I had a number of pro bono clients, that is, clients for whom I didn't charge a fee. These people had problems with their landlord or disputes arising from a family business. Many of my clients were women whose marriages had broken down and whose husbands had left them with major debt problems. Now, these weren't multi-million-dollar problems, but they were big problems for the people who had them. There's an Albert Einstein quote that captures it well. In matters of truth and justice, there is no difference between large and small problems, for issues concerning the treatment of people are all the same. When I first met many of these clients, they looked tired and worn out from having to deal with not only their legal problem, but also from having to try and understand the legal system. Now, I felt good about being able to help them understand the law and help them deal with their legal problem, but the fact is, none of them could have afforded my services. My parents couldn't have afforded my services. So, I left my job as a lawyer, and I returned to school. I'm now doing a PhD in access to justice, trying to improve a legal system that I've come to see as broken. That's why I care about access to justice. Now, why should you care? By a show of hands, who here has ever signed a rental agreement? Go on, put up your hands. Okay, how about bought insurance for anything? How about know somebody who's divorced? How about ever clicked I agree on a new piece of software or a new app without reading the agreement first? Okay, almost everybody, right? But if you've done any of these things, you've done something that could lead to a legal problem. And research shows that almost 45% of Canadian adults, that's almost 12 million people, have had a legal problem in the last 3 years alone. And that same research shows that the vast, vast majority of these people, over 90%, did not go to a lawyer to deal with that legal problem. And with average lawyer rates in the hundreds of dollars an hour, this isn't surprising. But by dealing with a legal problem on your own, that can lead to poor health, stress, worse legal outcomes, or simply giving up and accepting an injustice. We should all care about access to justice because most of us will have a legal problem at some point. We just don't think it's going to happen to us. Now, here's another reason to care. I've mentioned that legal problems are very common, but the people who are most severely affected by them are those who are at or near the margins of society, people who have the fewest resources with which to oppose injustice. Recall the words of Martin Luther King Jr. that an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Being able to stand up against injustice is an important part of maintaining our human dignity. And believing that your legal system isn't stacked in favor of the rich and powerful, those who can afford lawyers, is a cornerstone of our society and of our democracy. The Chief Justice of Canada has called access to justice the biggest problem facing the legal profession. And I think she's right. So what do we do? First, let me speak to those of you who are lawyers, law students, paralegals, advocates, or are in some way connected with the legal system. We need to change how we do things. Too often, people see the legal system and law as inaccessible and out of reach. It's like a castle with high walls and doors that are closed to anybody who isn't a legal insider or doesn't have plenty of money. This needs to change. Does this mean that everybody needs a lawyer? No. But everybody should know where to turn if they have a legal problem, and they shouldn't be afraid to do so. As lawyers, I think we have an obligation to make sure that the public believes, and truly believes, that the justice system is fair. We can help achieve this by trying to demystify the law, by broadening who provides legal services, and by making those services more affordable. How? Well, here are 4 ideas. First, collaborate with doctors or social workers or community agencies and try and bring law to the people who have legal problems out in the community. Second, if you're drafting a contract, use plain language that anybody can understand. Third, if you're a senior or retired lawyer, donate your time to mentor a young lawyer who's trying to improve access. And fourth, and perhaps most important, dedicate your career in some way to improving access to justice. So for all of the people who already do some of these things, and there are many, who provide free or low-cost legal services, or who work for legal aid, work in the community, or help improve access to justice in some way, thank you for what you do. But the point is that many of us can do much more. So, if you're a lawyer, a paralegal, an advocate, and particularly if you're a law student, I challenge you to be thoughtful, to be creative, and to be bold. I challenge you to broaden and deepen access to your services, particularly for those who need those services the most. And now for everybody else, here are 2 things. First, take notice, and second, demand change. By take notice, I mean don't be cynical or apathetic about justice. A justice system that is truly accessible is worth working for. And so the next time that you feel hard done by, or cheated, or frustrated, take note of that feeling. If it's happened to you, it'll happen to somebody else. And the next time that you see a friend or family member struggling with an injustice, take notice of that. And then demand change. Just as we need to change attitudes within the legal profession, we also need to change attitudes in society more generally. It's time to tear down the walls between the legal profession and the public. We need to dismantle the idea of law as an inaccessible castle. How do we do this? Well, there are many possible ways. But how about this? What about universal legal coverage, similar to universal health care? When I ask you the first questions today, what would you do if you broke your arm or had a persistent cough? You all had an answer. But 100 years ago, before health care became part of the fabric of Canadian society, the answers wouldn't have been that obvious. Today, we have a health system that, according to a survey done in 2012, is a point of pride for more than 90% of Canadians. And people across the country use it every day. Isn't justice worth a similar commitment? And if we know that everybody is likely to have a legal problem at some point in their lives, but that they're also not going to anticipate those problems, shouldn't we do something to help them protect themselves? Here's what it could look like. You could pay into a system, either voluntarily or through your taxes, that would provide free or low-cost legal counseling if and when you need it, and also provide high-quality legal representation if you need that to defend a lawsuit or change your will or fight an eviction. Now, if you think that this is far-fetched, remember that many countries encourage people to save for retirement through special features of their tax code that have special provisions for retirement investments. And here in Canada and many other countries, the health system is funded in whole or in part through your taxes. And since your taxes already pay for courts, shouldn't they pay for your ability to be able to access the legal system when you need it? Now, I don't have all the answers, but my point is this. Having a serious conversation about legal services for everyone is worthwhile. Right now, it's not part of the public debate. But with a change in attitudes, that could change. The idea of a truly accessible justice system is something that's so far away that most of us haven't given it any thought. But everyday justice affects us all. And I believe that it is possible to get there from here. Thank you very much.